Welcome GRD 131, Graphic Design 1, to Exercise 4, which is going to be our Fall Harvest Billboard. Now, right now I'm looking at the Fall HarvestFest flyer. The one I worked on, yours probably looks very similar because we kept things pretty conservative. The next step I was going to do was going to be adding some decorations, some fall leaves, things like that, maybe adding some color, maybe changing fonts. But what I'd actually like to do is kind of change things up a little bit by changing the format. Now, this is a flyer, and this could be hung up on a wall. It could be indoors at a supermarket or something like that. But where they're really going to be advertising is going to be on billboards and even banner ads. So I'd like to work on a billboard. I thought it'd be cool to take this information, the same information, and repurpose it to fit on a billboard. Now, for one thing, it's horizontal instead of vertical, so that's going to change the way we lay out our information. And if you think about billboards, we have kind of a shorter attention span as far as seeing the information and taking in the information and even grabbing people's attention. They're not going to be reading a lot of words and a lot of copy while they're driving, so we're going to try to really simplify things. And we may have to take out some copy. We may have to adjust some things. Here's my version that I was working on, and I'm going to go through this with you, but here's a quick version. I don't want you to study this for too long, but this is what I ended up coming up with, and I added things as I went. I ended up adding a picture because it kind of needed a lead into this because the format is so wide. And I even dropped this information about the dates over a little bit because it kind of kept the angle of flow a little bit more because I used this diagonal pumpkin and it kind of kept the flow a little bit. It kept the movement from right to left. Now remember, with a billboard, we're usually going to start with the top left and move over in a diagonal manner, and we're going to move very fast because it's a billboard and you don't have a lot of time to read it. So people aren't going to be reading columns or anything like that. They're going to see an image. It's going to lead you right into the headline, and they're going to see the dates, and then the last thing they should see will be the logo and the company, whatever that is, a healthcare system, whatever it is. Here it's Stony Brook Farms, and their website and address is at the bottom. I didn't put the phone number because they could go to the website and get the phone number if they want to call. I don't know how many people really call Stony Brook Farms for information about the Fall Harvest Fest. They could, but they can go and find all the information on the website. That's what it's there for. And we kind of limited the copy that had about hay rides, pumpkins. I didn't mention food and games for kids and things like that. Kept it very simple because remember, we have a short attention span when you're looking at a billboard. So that's what I did here, and I ended up throwing a picture in, and I ended up putting a picture in the background, a very light version that I turned down the opacity just because it kind of helped the unity. So looking at our design principles, and if we start with hierarchy, this is certainly the element that you should see first. You should see there's a Fall Harvest Fest. Second, the dates. They should know when it is. And then third would be anything else would really be third. The last thing you should see is the logo. They should know where it's at. So if they know what it is, when it is, and where it's at, that's pretty much what you need for a billboard. And other information is on here. The last thing you see towards the right, because again, we're reading top left to bottom right, the last thing you see is going to be this Stony Brook Farms web address. And there's also some other information up here advertising what's there because you want to encourage people to come and kind of advertise what's there. They're not going to drive here just to get some baked goods. There's hay rides, there's pumpkins. I didn't even put pumpkin picking because the idea is you could pick them or you can grab them or whatever. Pumpkin picking, you're usually not picking them out of a patch. You're usually just grabbing one, finding one. And the huge cornfield maze, again, is the last thing, so it's off to the right, so you kind of see that at the end. So this was my idea that I worked on, and I made some changes. I even changed the font because I started originally with the font I used. I didn't want to change it, but after looking at some of the final versions, it just looked easier to read with this. And I even tried black outlines and all kinds of things to create emphasis, but it made it a little harder to read. So I'm going to go through all of these steps here, and it'll be good practice for working with Gravit and even working with images and all that kind of stuff that'll help us with design. We're going to do more simple design projects, but this one would be a good opportunity to kind of work on a lot of things and make decisions based on design principles. And that's why I'm doing this as a separate video, because I just want you to kind of look at this first, and then I'm going to go through the process starting in the next video, and starting with the process of going back to our previous flyer, resaving it as our new exercise, changing the format, because we're going to give it a format. We're going to make it like 12 by 3.5, I believe, because that's in proportion to a 14 by 48 billboard, which is one of the standard size billboards. So we'll go with that. So I'm going to go through that process using this stuff here and help you make some decisions when you do that. Now, you could make other decisions. You could use different images. You could use different fonts. You could do different colors. I'll try to show you a lot of the things I did in here, and everything I did in here was because I needed it. I didn't really mean to. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to make a block that's black and then put white type over it. I just did that because there wasn't a good place to put this information. But if you kind of strip it along the bottom, it kind of acts like a border, but then it also has the important information there. Because I didn't want to stack stuff underneath the logo. I didn't want to have columns of things going on. Same thing with this up here. I put this up here in green, kind of lighter. Remember, darker usually on the bottom, lighter on top, just like ground sky, that kind of thing. So that's what I went with. And then I even like faded this out. I'll show you how to do that. And I did that not because I thought it looked cool. I did it because it just kind of blended better. It looked too harsh. When we had a line here and it was orange, whatever color I used, it just looked too harsh. Even this thing I thought looked better. I originally had it left justified like that, and then there was kind of a gap here, and I thought, oh, it'll flow better. Now, that kind of is a little more unconventional, but it actually does flow better. And I did try to align them underneath the L's, so we have some kind of alignment going on. And that way it kind of follows this line here. So we have flow going on here. We have flow moving us over here, coming down. We have contrast because we're using the black and orange of the pumpkin. We have black down here. We have a lighter background. We're using unity because we're using orange in here. We're using all the colors that are in the pumpkin pretty much. We're using orange here for the main headline that's here, and even with this logo, I even had to put a white oval behind it so it popped a little bit better in front of the photo that I use. And again, I used the photo not because I thought it would look cool to have some tinted down photo behind it, but because it looked too stark. We had a color photo here, and then it looked very white. And if you look at billboards, there's a lot of color and photography in billboards. They don't always look, just color on white. So it looked nice to put something behind here and just tone it down so you could just see kind of the hint of some pumpkins and things like that. And it gives unity, it gives a warmness to the whole layout. So that's what we're going to work on starting in the next video, which I'll call part 2. So this will be part 1, which is pretty much just the intro. Part 2, we're going to start working on this.